Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 74. I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Jameson Dead.
And guess what, everybody? Jameson's giving you this episode tonight again.
Woo!
Hell yeah, he's coming into his own.
I'm doing it. I'm enjoying this more and more. So hopefully you guys enjoy me presenting and you'll get used to it so that, maybe one day I'll usurp you. You never know.
Oh my God. You'll quit and start your own podcast and then just rehash the episodes we already did.
Oh God.
So I actually listened to an episode of a different podcast that covered a case that we had done.
Okay.
And I was listening to it and I was like, okay. And, there's no surprises, obviously, but it's interesting to hear different people's takes and find information that they found that I didn't. And I thought that was amusing. Like somehow they got their hands on court documents that I didn't see.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So they had, it was minor, goofy little information, nothing super important, but it made me stop and be like, man, maybe I should be digging into court records. And sometimes I see them, but I don't dig too deep. But they went into a much deeper dive than I did on that particular case. So I thought that was kind of cool.
And that's really interesting because you normally do pretty deep dives on all the information.
I try. There are some times that I'm just running out of time, especially like with listener requests. I love those, but I try to get them done as fast as possible. And so we did the case on Hazel Fromm. And,
yes,
we thanked Lynn for it. And she commented that I should have read that book. And I'm like, yeah, but I really just don't have the time. I just don't. I don't know if you remember, but even before we recorded our very first episode, there was a case that I had wanted to do. That book has literally been sitting on a shelf waiting for me to continue reading it.
Oh, God.
And we're talking, it's been a year now. And
Damn.
And I'm like, I want to do it, but it's such a commitment to read a book because the only time I really have is driving. And the problem with researching while driving, like, sure, I can listen to an audiobook, but I can't take notes.
Right.
And then, so what good is it if I can't take the notes? So it's really been very frustrating when I want to do something like that. So, yeah, so it's good that you're taking some of this off my hands.
Well, happy to help.
All right, so go ahead, lay it on us. What do we got?
So tonight we are covering the case of Tracie Hawlett and J.B. Beasley.
Okay.
Tracie Jean Hawlett was born on Wednesday, March 3rd, 1982. She was a second-year majorette at Northview High School, as well as a beauty contest finalist.
Oh, so she's very pretty.
Yeah, she had a lot going for her. So, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of information about Tracie's life aside from what we're going to talk about right now in this case.
That's always sucks. That means she died young, obviously. And that it sucks because we want to honor the victims, and it's really hard when you can't find information on them.
Yeah, it is really tough, and you wish you had more, and you wish that you could shed some more light on stuff, but we just run with what we got and try to cover it as best we can.
No, and you're right, and you know what? I understand why families don't want to go into the details because they're in pain and it hurts to talk about it. Which, just another shout out to Zach from episode 68 with Angelica Hadsell. He was a great person to interview, and thank you for all your feedback. And, so someone like him is like a gem in that he's able to share what he can. But it's tough when we don't have that information.
J.B. Hilton Green Beasley was born on July 31st, 1982 in Troy, Alabama to Hilton Lanter Beasley and Cheryl Stout.
Okay, and her name is J.B., the letters?
Yes, that's her actual given name.
Okay, right, fair enough.
In 1984, her family moved to Dothan. JB was an All-American cheerleader and in the 8th grade at Carver Middle School. She was also an active dancer for 10 years, getting many awards and accolades and being recognized for her expertise in dance.
Nice.
She was also a member of the First United Methodist Church in Dothan. On July 31st, 1999, it was JB's 17th birthday, and she had a lot to celebrate. She was an up-and-coming senior in high school, and her future was very promising, even though she had a little bit of a troubled past. But pretty much everyone has. Everyone has their moments, right?
I was going to say most of us do, yeah.
Her relationship with her mother was very, very strained, like really bad, to the point where her dance instructor became her legal guardian.
That's strange.
Yeah. I don't know the full story on that, but there must have been some really, really bad things going on. Because even after JB's death, her mother described her daughter as rebellious and manipulative, though smart.
Wow. See, this is after her death that her mother's saying that.
Yes. So just imagine your own mother calling you that.
I mean, in some ways, I'm glad the mother's being honest because oftentimes after someone dies, it's all roses and rainbows, But
Yeah, just
but at the
pretend that all
same
the bad goes away.
yeah, but at the same time, when I hear something like that, I actually don't apply it to the child as much as I do the parent because what kind of parent are you to say something like that about your kid after their death? So to
Right,
me, that says
exactly.
more about her as a parent.
Okay, I can agree with that. Yep. At approximately 10 p.m. on July 31st, 1999, JB and Tracie both left Dothan together in JB's 1993 black Mazda 929. It was JB's birthday, and they were off to a field party with her friends and one of her fellow dancers, Jana Hare. They were going to her house, which was 10 miles north of Dothan. Tracie had worked earlier in the evening, finishing her shift at J.C. Penney shortly after 9 p.m. and went home to change. Then JB picked her up shortly thereafter between 9:45 and 10 p.m. The girls never made it to the party.
Yeah, I kind of had a feeling that was going to happen.
Tracie's mother said that they couldn't find the party and that they just couldn't understand the directions, which I thought was a weird shrugging it off. There may be more to it, but don't want to admit it kind of thing.
Maybe, but what year is this again?
1999.
99, so cell phones are kind of a thing, but not really. GPSs really aren't a thing. So I just remember, for me myself personally, I was a teen in the early 90s. And when we went out to find a good time or whatever, and we couldn't find where we were trying to go, we found something else to do. Like, you had no other options, especially in a field party. You know how hard it's going to be to reach somebody at that party?
Yeah, absolutely impossible. The girls were spotted in Headland around 10:30 p.m. I believe Headland was a little bit farther from where JB's house was.
Okay.
So they were spotted around 10:30. Police records show that they stopped at a gas station near the intersection of routes 173 and 431 in Headland and used a payphone to call friends. I'm guessing probably to ask for directions to try to figure out where the hell this party was.
Okay.
Tracie's curfew was 11:30, so that kind of cut the girls' night a little bit short.
Yeah,
They
because at that
grabbed
point, you're only going to arrive, say hello to a bunch of people, and leave.
Exactly. Yep. 1 hour later, just after 11:30, the girls turned up in Ozark, which was 20 miles northwest of Dothan. They turned up at the Big Little convenience store. The store was closed, but the girls encountered a woman and her daughter who had stopped to grab a soda before the store had closed. The girls asked for directions to Highway 231, which would take them back to town so they could be home. The woman who gave them directions, Marilyn Merritt, would later tell police that JB's car was spotless and that it was clean, the girls were clean, and nothing seemed off. So no red flags, no issues, just innocently stopping for directions.
Right.
At the right end of the store where the girls had stopped, there was a payphone. Tracie used that payphone to call her mother and say that they had gotten lost and they wound up in Ozark, gotten directions, and they were on their way home.
I have to say, I do not miss the days where you had to find a payphone to call somebody.
Oh yeah. Well, imagine, when you were a businessman and you had a beeper.
I remember those days, yes, but it's even worse. Like, come on, Those girls are stopping at a payphone, so they're either calling collect or they have a ton of coins.
Right.
Those days sucked. I hated those days.
Yeah, imagine if you were short and there was some kind of emergency or something.
Yeah, that's when you call collect, but still, it still
Yeah, but
sucks.
even then.
Yeah, I actually, this is funny. This is just, sorry guys, and we're going on a small tangent. I remember back when calling like 3 towns over was considered a long distance call, and you had to pay more for that.
Yeah, I remember that too.
God, what a world we lived in. Joyous is right. It was like the dark ages.
Or if you called after a certain time, calls were free.
I don't remember that part. Maybe,
Okay.
yeah, maybe I was gonna say maybe it's because I grew up in a city, but I don't know if that matters. But I don't remember that part. But I do remember when call waiting was first introduced, and
Okay.
we could. So like I remember like I was dating a girl who couldn't take calls after a certain time, so I told her that at like whatever 10:20 go on and dial a phone number because there was a phone number you could call that would tell you what movies were playing and what time they were playing.
Oh yeah.
So
I
I would
remember
tell
that.
her to call that so that when I called a couple minutes later, the phone didn't ring and she could click over and talk to me. And that's how we avoided her parents knowing I called.
That's incredible.
It was pretty funny. Anyway, we digress.
So JB and Tracy pulled out of the parking lot, turning right towards the highway. It was one of the last times the girls were seen alive. After a long double shift, Tracy's mom fell asleep shortly after getting the call from her daughter. She woke up at 5 a.m. to realize that Tracy had not returned home yet.
That's a shitty feeling.
I can't. Oh my God, no! I'm fumbling over my words, and I'm not even
Yeah.
a parent. That freaks me out.
I mean, just the idea that, I mean, it's not her fault. She had a long fucking day. It's not that out of the ordinary that your teenagers are going to be out late. It's a normal everyday thing, and then that happens.
Tracy's mom said, "Tracy's never late. I knew something beyond her control was keeping her from getting home."
Yep.
So it's even worse when it's out of the normal behavior from somebody you know.
Exactly.
At 8 a.m. on August 1st, 1999, Tracy's mom called the Dothan police, and the police started to search for a possible car wreck.
Makes sense.
Almost at that exact moment, the Ozark police found JB's black Mazda just before 8 a.m., less than a mile from the payphone that they had used the night before.
Well, that sucks. And why? The question really becomes: did they pick someone up there? Did someone grab them there, and that's as far as they got before this person attacked? Or did they stop for someone after driving away? Now I have questions, but go ahead.
There's all kinds of theories, and there's a long, twisted road we're going to follow to the end I have coming. So
Okay.
just strap in and enjoy the ride.
Helmet on.
The street where the car was found was houseless, and there was woods on both sides. So not a good start there.
Definitely not the road you want to encounter a stranger on.
No, not at all. According to police, the car was initially that it showed no signs of foul play,
Okay.
which, as an investigator coming to a call like that and realizing that 2 teenage girls are missing, and you as sick as it sounds, you almost hope for foul play because then it could point you in a certain direction.
Well, I'm gonna guess the cops thought they were runaways now because the car. I'm joking. I'm joking.
It's always the go-to.
Right?
Although police say why the girls had stopped remains a mystery. Police say it doesn't look like someone had ran them off the road or was trying to injure them in any way because the car had no damage to it. Though undamaged, the car was muddy and it was almost out of gas, even though it had been filled up the day before.
Okay, so they did a lot of driving, which makes sense because they're lost.
Yes, yep, they're all over the place. JB's driver's license was found on the dashboard of the car.
Okay, so now I'm thinking they were pulled over. Continue. I'm just gonna keep making theories.
The girls' purses were found inside the car. The only thing that looked to be missing was the car keys.
I was gonna say, and the girls.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah. It needs to be noted that the police, not knowing the full scope of what was going on, did not secure the crime scene.
Of course they didn't. They never do.
And they did not record how many officers had been looking through the interior of the vehicle.
I see. So they don't know it's a crime scene, so fingerprints are gone. Like, there's going
Yep.
to be way too many of those. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and that when I read that, I was screaming. I was like, "No!"
Yeah, it's so frustrating. I understand police work is difficult, but these are basic fucking things.
Yeah, this should be like Police 101,
Yeah,
like on the police exam. When you come to an abandoned car, what do you do? A, touch it all over the place without recording it,
right.
or B, secure the crime scene.
Well, it's funny because we've been doing this for so long now that I swear to God, if I walked into a room and someone was laying there with, like, it could be like my wife or my mother, and like all of a sudden like there's blood, my first instinct is not going to be to run over and check them. It's going to be I should call 911 and secure the crime scene.
Yeah,
Like, it's
exactly.
so
Yep.
ridiculous.
Lieutenant Rex Tipton, the chief of detectives with the Ozark Police Department, was contacted by a sergeant at the scene and told him about the discovery, stating, "I don't know why I'm bothering you, but something about this just feels funny."
Okay, so he's half an idiot, but he's half intuitive.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, at least, he didn't just brush it off like it was nothing.
Yeah, he's not like, oh, we're sorry to bother you. Like, he called. He didn't say I didn't want to bother you. He actually called. So we'll give him that much.
The sergeant ran the car's license plates and discovered that it was registered in Dothan. The sergeant contacted police there and was told that they were taking a missing report from Tracie's parents. Dothan police sent an investigator back to the car to have it towed to Dothan.
Okay, all right.
As the investigator was waiting for a tow truck, he noticed that there was a brown spot towards the bottom of the trunk and knew that he had to access that trunk.
Oh
He,
God.
yeah.
Oh, complete.
But
I'm all right. I'm a smart person.
okay.
I'm gonna assume they're in the trunk. But I swear to God, if they're just under the car, I'm going to be pissed.
But again, at least he had the intuition to be like, "Oh, that seems off. Let's try to investigate here."
Yes.
The investigator found a lever on the inside of the car, and at 2 p.m., which was 6 hours after the car had been discovered, the trunk was popped, and inside, the investigators saw a pair of jeans and realized that there were bodies in the trunk.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts on this. First off, what did this cop had nothing better to do than sit there on the side of the road with a car for 6 hours? Nothing better to do than sit there for 6 hours waiting for something? That blows my mind. And I'm not judging in that sense because it's a small town in Alabama. I get it. There's probably not a lot going on. This is probably like prior to the bodies, this was still probably the highlight of their day.
Probably.
However, the brown spot on the bottom of the trunk or whatever he noticed, if that's a pool of blood, was it not dripping? Like,
No, no, I think it was, I mean, it was brown. So if it was blood, it had been sitting there for a while.
yeah, but there's not like this. It hasn't been sitting there for days. By 8
No,
a.m., that's less than 12 hours.
right.
It's just, I don't know. It's weird. And
Oh, no,
I'm
trust
annoyed.
me, I completely agree.
I'm annoyed. But at least they noticed it before they towed the car.
Oh, yes. Yeah, then it would have been really bad.
I can't even imagine if like someone at the impound lot in Dothan, Alabama, 3 weeks later was like, "Do you smell that?" Oh my
Oh,
God.
God. So at 10:30, crime tape was put up around the scene. So
10:30
way
at night.
way longer than it ever should have been.
Wonderful.
Yeah. JB and Tracie were inside, each dead from a 9 millimeter gunshot wound to the head.
Wow. Okay.
They were clothed and showed few signs of struggle. Tracie's arm was scratched, and her $95 New Balance shoes were covered in mud.
Interesting. Now the question on that is, were they taken out of the car and brought into the woods by the killer and then brought back, which would be weird, or are they
It
covered in
really
mud?
would.
Or were they covered in mud because they were out trying to find this field party and couldn't?
Ah, I didn't think about the field party aspect of it.
Yeah, so that may not be a clue, but continue.
Tracie, being the first one in the trunk, had been shot in the temple. JB had been shot in the cheek, and she was noticeably dirty, and she was all covered in mud. Both girls' pants were wet below the knee, and a single 9mm shell was resting on Tracie's leg.
Okay. Now, Tracie was the first one in the trunk?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So the wet from below the knee, that means, again, they could have been, like, their pants could have been wet when they were taken, and that could have been them searching for this field party. But it also sounds more likely now that he may have brought them out into the woods for some reason. But if they're fully clothed, you haven't gotten into it yet, but were they sexually assaulted?
I'm not going to reveal anything because we'll just have to get to that when we get to it.
Okay, so then I'm going to change my theory a little bit. He either
Okay.
brought both of them out, sexually assaulted one or both of them, then brought them back, put one in the trunk, shot her, and then put the other one, either killed the other one, and then put her in the trunk. I don't know. It sounds like the second one was shot either at the front of the trunk or while she was in the trunk, because how else does the bullet get in there? But continue.
So, robbery was quickly ruled out as no valuables were missing. The only missing items were JB's keychain, which had the car keys.
Okay, which might be found in the woods if they conduct a search.
Right, exactly. An autopsy revealed that the girls had not been raped and that there were no drugs or alcohol in their system.
Okay, so then I return to my first theory that the reason they're muddy and wet is because they were searching for the party on their own beforehand.
Authorities were able to determine that the girls had not been murdered where the car had been parked.
Weird. Okay. Well, he might have killed them at the gas station, put them in their trunk, drove a mile, and then for whatever reason abandoned the car. I'm assuming it's a he. Could be a she.
A palm print was recovered from the trunk lid of the car. Unfortunately, it does not say, or it didn't go into detail whose it was.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they even tested it, but there was one that was found on the trunk lid. Within a week, police announced a nationwide 24-hour hotline to receive tips for information leading to the case. There was a $15,000 reward that was brought about by donations from residents.
Nice. Okay.
On top of that, the GA at the time, he announced that the county would include $10,000 more dollars. They would add $10,000 more dollars to the reward to make sure that whoever did this was caught and that the county knew that they were taking this seriously and they wanted justice done. So, more than 2 months after the crime, a stunning revelation came to light from forensic examiners. They found semen on JB's bra, panties, and skin.
But they weren't sexually assaulted, which means that the person masturbated on them.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Oh.
That's pretty gross. You gotta wonder if he did it while they were in the trunk.
Oh, God.
You know what? There are sick people out there, man. We've been talking about them for a year now.
Oh, I didn't even think of that theory. That gives me chills.
You're welcome.
Authorities considered this to be the key of the unsolved murders. Well, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
You have to assume that it's a sexual offense, or at least came of a sexual offense, said David Emery, the DA of Dale and Genevieve counties.
So what he's saying is, once you find the semen, you have to assume those things. But, because it's one of those things. They're pretty girls. They're out and about. You know what I mean? Like some guy, it was an attack of opportunity kind of thing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but when you're in that line of work, you don't want to make assumptions like that.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, I agree in some ways, but at the same time, when you see it over and over and over and over again, this is why a lot of times they're
like the Runaways,
like the runaway thing, exactly. But we've already discussed it. Most serial killers aren't sexually motivated, but that doesn't mean that most murders of teenage girls aren't.
True. At 11:30 p.m. on July 31st, 1999, at the same time that Tracie was calling her mother, 28-year-old Johnny William Baratine told his young wife that he was going to the store to buy milk for their son. Johnny didn't return until shortly after 1 a.m., and according to his wife, he seemed visibly upset.
Okay.
When asked, he said he had been hit by a black truck with Dothan tags near Herring Ave. Now, Herring Ave is where the girls were found in the scene of the crime.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with Alabama license plates. There's going to be something that separates it out as a Dothan tag?
I'm guessing so. I'm not quite sure. I mean,
I mean, I
he's
I know that like some Florida plates have like Miami-Dade County on them, but it's weird. Like we don't up here in Massachusetts, nothing on our license plate says Boston,
true. Yeah.
so it's weird. Anyway, continue.
In the days that followed, Johnny would confide in others that he knew something about the murders of the two teens. He said he thought he might know who did it, said Evelyn Murphy, who was friends with Johnny's friend, Leon Jordan, who encouraged Johnny to go forward to the authorities and collect the reward.
Oh God. So obviously this guy's going to become a suspect, and the question now is he actually responsible and stupid enough to try to collect the reward on someone he killed, or is he lying and the money was the motivation for the lie?
What are you going with? What's your
I mean, I have a
theory?
feeling he's going to become a suspect, and I love a stupid criminal, so I'm gonna lean towards he's our killer, and this is how he's going to get caught because it's too stupid. I hate to pick on people from Alabama. I love Alabama; it's one of my favorite states, but there are some Bamans that really aren't so bright.
Yeah, well, he's not the brightest bulb in the bunch because on September 1st, exactly 1 month after the bodies of the girls had been found, Johnny met with police for a 4-hour videotaped interview where he offered up 6 different stories, some of them in which he placed himself at the crime scene.
Wow. All right, so he's definitely a stupid criminal.
According to Ozark Police Chief Tony Spivey, Johnny first said on the night of the killings he'd seen a black truck speeding away from where the girls were found. As the interview went, Johnny changed his story several times, finally telling investigators he'd picked up a quote unquote tattooed man he didn't know, and the two drove by the big little store where the girls had been.
Okay.
Johnny said the man he'd given a ride to got into the car with the two girls, who Johnny identified as the quote unquote the dead girls, and told Johnny to follow him.
Cause yeah, let's do that.
They ended up on Herring Ave, which was the crime scene. The man got out with the girls, and shortly thereafter, Johnny heard 2 gunshots, and the man returned.
Okay, so now you waited a month after the fact to call. Now you're an accessory after the fact, whether you meant to be or not.
Exactly. Yep. I was thinking the same freaking thing. Johnny gave a ride to the man away from the scene and then went home.
Idiot. And
Exactly.
I'm honestly I don't believe this story at all. But continue.
So that's just one version.
Yeah,
In
right.
another version, he confessed where the man he had picked up was his neighbor. Yeah. So he's all over the freaking map.
So just tell me that his neighbor has a tattoo of a black truck, and this will start to make sense.
Oh, that would be great. Alarmingly, Johnny lived only 8/10ths of a mile from where the car was found and where the girls had been in the trunk.
Okay.
Police arrested Johnny then and there and made him the prime suspect and charged him with 2 counts of capital murder.
Which he absolutely deserves at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Even if all of his story is crap, my God.
My only concern now is that he's going to turn out not to be the killer.
There were problems, however, with his accounts, one being he never mentioned sexual activity. The neighbor Johnny implicated had an alibi, and both Johnny and the neighbor did not match the DNA samples from the crime scene.
Exactly.
Johnny admitted he fabricated the whole story
For the
in hopes of
reward money.
yep, in
Yep.
hopes of scoring some quick cash.
Idiots. They're all idiots.
Quote, I didn't see anything, he told the grand jury. I made up everything to get the reward money.
Uh, again, I go back to I love Alabama and most of the people there, but some Bamans are
But god
idiots.
damn.
God, idiots.
In a September 1st preliminary hearing, Alabama Bureau of Investigation agent Charles Huggins testified that Johnny was still able to describe the girl's clothing and other items that were consistent at being at the crime scene.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if it's just like pure coincidence or like he heard reports. I don't know what, but that was creepy to me.
He may have seen them at the gas station. He did leave the house.
That's true. Yep.
I mean, it would be a really weird coincidence. Or, there may have been photos of them on the internet or on the news. This is really before the internet.
Yeah, this was the baby stages of the internet at this point.
Yeah.
Johnny was held without bond from his September 1st arrest going forward. On October 18th, he had a hearing, and Johnny denied he was involved in the killings. He said he simply went to the gas station and got milk. Johnny was denied bail, or bond, excuse me. Johnny said that he was tired and out of sorts when he gave his story on September 1st. After Johnny's DNA did not match the semen on JB's body, Johnny was finally awarded bond. Police still consider him a suspect because he allegedly made a jailhouse confession.
Which, at this point, with this guy, it means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's all just talk at this point.
Or it was coerced out of him.
That's true. We've seen a bunch of that.
Yeah.
So there are a couple other possible suspects that I would like to touch on here. We're going to start with the man from Michigan.
Okay, before you go into the man from Michigan here, I swear to God, if this is another unsolved case, I'm going to shove your mic right where the sun don't shine. Anyway, threats aside.
I encourage the support. A man from Michigan who was at a party the night of the murders near where the car was found is also a very viable suspect, says Chief Spivey, after tests failed to match the man's DNA found on the JB's clothing. The man, who Spivey wouldn't name, left town 2 days after the murders, and the investigators went to Michigan 3 times to try to interview him. The man cannot account for 3 to 4 hours of his time on the night of the murders and later made suspicious remarks to people, though the chief would not elaborate on what he meant by suspicious remarks.
Okay. Probably stupid shit like, if I killed some... Actually, he's from Michigan. That's the wrong accent. Anyway, go ahead.
So there's very little else on him. I think that they looked into him as a suspect for the fact that he couldn't account for time that he lost on that night.
Yeah, it makes sense. But at the same time, we're talking after 10 p.m. So, I couldn't prove where I was between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. last night, because I was in bed. So,
right.
Yeah, so who knows at this point? And maybe he drinks heavy. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's another thing is, you're not always in your sound mind.
Exactly.
Next up on our suspect list here is the driver of the small white pickup truck. I know, it's wonderful. They don't even have names. They're just, mysterious individuals.
I was going to say, this is like straight up hardcore Alabama. The driver of the white pickup truck is our next suspect. That was more of a Texas accent. I'm sorry, Alabama.
A video surveillance camera inside the Big Little store caught a grainy, poor quality image of what appears to be a small white pickup truck at the gas station where JB and Tracie had been using the phone. The store had closed, and there was no record of gas being purchased by debit or credit.
Which makes sense if the store is closed.
The video never reveals anyone getting out of the truck or clearly showing who the driver was. After releasing photos of the truck to the media, a month into the investigation, no one had come forward to say that they were the person in the video.
It'd be cool, and I know this isn't going to be the case because the timeline doesn't match up at all, but if it was Israel Keys and his white pickup truck.
Oh, God. Oh, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, but in the 90s, I think he was in the military at this point, so it's not lining up.
Okay, all right. Next up, we have the man from Mississippi.
That bastard man from Mississippi who keeps crossing our border.
In early March 2000, it was reported that a DNA sample taken from the Jones County, Mississippi man was being compared to samples taken from the body of JB, but Chief Spivey said that no factual evidence was known at the time that linked the murders of the girls to the sample. Spivey said that the man who was extradited from Jones County had been arrested there on an outstanding warrant for drug paraphernalia that was issued in Ozark. The man had been staying in Ozark with relatives, but 2 days after the murders, Spivey said investigators wanted to question him in connection with the case. He has been extensively interviewed and DNA samples have been obtained and sent to the forensic lab. But at this time, we do not have any factual information to connect him to this case. We just want to double make sure he's not involved.
That makes sense. It's still a little weird, but okay.
It is weird, and it seems like there's not a whole lot to go on these other suspects. I think it's just them being in the area or them not being able to account for something that
Right.
these investigators are just kind of clinging on to.
I get it. And realistically, at this point, it just sounds to me like they should just do a blanket like DNA swabbing, but no one's going to voluntarily give that up.
Right, exactly. Police were stumped almost from the beginning.
You
When
think?
really, right? When state and county detectives joined the hunt, more than 50 investigators were working on the case in a county where there were no more than 45 officers on its force.
The whole county. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. An FBI profiler was brought in. Unfortunately, the profile did not show anything dramatic. The profiler said that the killer most likely was a young male described to be a loner.
Okay.
Yeah, that narrows it down, right?
Yeah, I'm like, sure. I mean, we knew it was a male. I'm a female's not leaving semen behind. Well, technically, I guess she could if she brought it with her.
Right. In the years immediately after the killings, investigators conducted more than 500 interviews and tested the DNA of more than 70 potential suspects.
Okay, they're doing some work.
After that, the girl's case went cold for almost 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah, isn't that insane?
That sucks for their families.
After decades without an arrest, police hired a company to do crime scene DNA through a genealogy database.
I love genetic genealogy.
Ozark police chief said that the 2018 arrest of the alleged Golden State Killer through the use of a genealogy and DNA database sparked the chain of events that led to the break in the girl's case.
Good. This is going to happen more and more often. It's going to be amazing.
The police department reached out to the Paraben Nanolabs in Virginia, which specialized in the DNA engineering. Police said that they identified an extended family member of a suspect and searched him out. They asked the man, Coley McCraney, to submit a DNA sample that they said matched the DNA at the crime scene. Coley, a truck driver who had spent some time in the military and was also a preacher and had no record, was arrested in 2019.
Was he driving a black truck? Sorry.
The DNA was the key piece of evidence for the prosecution. Once again, no shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. We knew that once we found it. Yeah.
Coley testified that he did have sex with JB, but did not kill her.
Oh, he's trying to say it was consensual?
Yup.
Okay, so this is 20 years later. How old was he at the time of the murder?
So he was 49 when he was convicted.
Okay, so he was like 30 when he claimed he had consensual sex with a 17-year-old?
Apparently.
Yeah, that's bright. Yeah, we'll go with that. Sure.
He said they had previously met at the Wiregrass Common Malls almost 2 months before the murders and planned again to meet at the gas station on July 31st at 10 p.m.
I still, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, gee, this is a teenage girl who's going to a party with her friend, another teenager, and she's going to hook up with a 30-year-old dude. Nope. I mean, was he rich?
What? It doesn't seem like it. He just seemed like another old bloke.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with bullshit.
When JB was late, Coley said that he went to his mother's house to wait for the call from JB. So he'd waited at the gas station, and when she didn't show, he was like, well, I guess I'll go home and wait for her call.
Yeah, okay.
Coley says after leaving his mother's house at 11:30 p.m. to head home, his alternator gave out and the car broke down at the same gas station where JB and Tracie had been using the phone.
I was gonna say there's video
Oh,
footage of them there. Is there video
yeah.
footage of him there?
Coley did see JB.
Okay.
So they were able to see each other in person.
According to him.
Yes, according to him, whether that's factual or not. After talking to JB for a few minutes, he got into her car and gave the girls directions to Highway 231, where they stopped at another gas station where a semi truck was parked, and JB and Coley had sex in the back of the cab of his truck.
Sure.
And like, imagine being Tracie. Like, what are you supposed to do?
Here's the thing, right? I'm gonna step off the I don't buy this guy's story, and we're gonna play devil's advocate. Do you not maybe you don't remember what it was like, or maybe you didn't do this stuff, but I can remember being a wingman for buddies of mine who wanted to hook up with a girl, and they would always try to set me up with a friend of theirs, and we would
Yes.
go
Yep.
out, and sometimes we would me and the other person who didn't click would sit in another room watching TV or trying to talk or something while my buddy was getting it on with a girl, and vice versa. So, like, sometimes you do that. So,
Right.
hypothetically, if this person wasn't almost 30, I might even buy that story. But I have a hard time believing that a pretty 17-year-old girl is sneaking around in the middle of the night to have sex with a 30-year-old in the back of a trailer rig.
Yeah. No, I didn't buy it either. Now, Coley did testify that after having sex, the girls drove him to his home around 12:45, and they parted and went their separate ways.
Sure. Okay.
Coley did end up going to trial, and there was a lengthy trial, and he denied a whole bunch, and it dragged on for a while, and I'm not going to go into all the details here,
Yeah, it's not
But I-
necessary.
but I will go into the most important detail, and that was that Coley was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison.
Good. He deserves it.
And that is the case that I have for you tonight.
Well, at least it wasn't an unsolved one, you bastard. Although if you had built that up like for 20 years, if you had spent more time on that, I'd have been like, you son of a bitch. That's a good one. That was a good case. That was a good one.
Yes. Yeah, I like that one.
It's tragic. It's too bad. I mean, the sad part is you think you're safe because you're traveling in numbers, but you're really not when someone has a weapon like that.
Right, exactly.
Especially because they can turn it on one and say to the other, if you do anything stupid, I'm going to shoot this one, and vice versa. Then it's like there's that extra weight of responsibility.
Right. Then it's just a huge mind game.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But awesome. Thank you for that. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We will see you again soon. I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Jameson Dead.
And we'll see you next week.